Hi guys, so to jump right in on our readings, I thought there was a lot of information to absorb, and it was a little bit hard for me to get through with all of the different theories, with all of the different races and ethnicities, but I think it was really valuable in that, again, all of these readings are just, to me, a reminder of keeping your mind open to realizing all of the things that you don't know because that's not your lifestyle and your situation. And I think in our career in student affairs, we have to continuously be aware of how other people might feel and the sensitivities of other people, even if they're not something that we've experienced on our own. So I think these readings just do a good job pointing out all the different factors to keep in mind and how it affects our students. In the Jones and Abe's book, starting out with the theoretical interventions of intersectionality, that was a little confusing, so I'm hoping some of you guys will talk about that. But from what I understood, it's just talking, it's a theory that is centered around people of color and is just sort of requiring us to rethink all of our policies and all of our programming to better take into consideration the needs of students, essentially who are minorities. And just sort of the complications of the individual versus the group identity with race, and then how power shapes privilege and shapes oppression. And I think those are good things to keep in mind because we are going to be in power, as staff members of the institution, and so it is our, it's within our power to figure out how privilege and oppression are going to play a role with our students, especially talking about the four domains. Thought that was interesting with inequality, the interconnectedness, structures of inequality, how things like images, symbols, and ideas on page 146, along with interpersonal communication and interaction with groups, how all of these little things play a role into a student's security with their own identity and with their own race, and how they identify and how salient their race is with them as well. To move on to the critical race theory, this one was a little bit easier for me to follow, talking about what race is versus racial identity versus racism and how they all can sort of interplay, and how the critical race theory relates to your campus climate at your institution and how the students are vibing off of each other and with their professors, service learning, and then just cultural centers also at the institution. And it also talks a lot about how there's just very subtle racism that almost goes unnoticed. And there's an example on page 173 that stood out to me. How at the University of Wisconsin they said the gap in educational achievement they wanted to close by bringing up the graduation rates for students of color to be in line with those of the whole student body. And they're talking about how that in and of itself expresses a racist perspective, a racist belief, because they're saying that the students of color should really be in line with everyone else because the white students are the ones that are already in line, and little things like that that are meaning, they have a good goal behind it and they have good intentions, but it just inherently expresses, undertones of racism by implying that students of color are separate, not a part of the whole student body, that are up here, and that we need to bring students of color back up to them. So those are just good things to point out, your wording and being aware of truly, even if you don't mean bad by doing something, that you have to continuously be aware, especially depending on if you are a white privileged person, how it feels to move through a university of primarily white students. And I think that that's so important to remember. Moving on along to the Evans et al. Book. I was really actually fascinated by the Cross-Fagan-Smith model of black identity development, because they kept talking about nigrescence, if I said that right, which is a term I've never heard before, referring to, the identity of becoming black, I believe is how they described it, and that the process of becoming black. And although it's a little bit of an older term, I think, it's very interesting. They described all these different sectors of when black children moving through pre-adolescence and adolescence and young adulthood, all the different stages of them, playing with their identity and figuring out how salient their race is in their identity. And that was just really interesting to try to read through and grasp. And then once I had finally thought I understood that, moving through all of the different theories for Asian, Native American, white, Latino, and all the different things that those students experience. Like, for example, Latinos oftentimes, people don't think that you know, their color of their skin actually plays a role in stuff, where it still does, according to Latinos, that still does affect them, and just all these different issues. And so I think it was really interesting. Can't wait to hear back from you guys, and hope my thoughts were coherent to follow. Thank you.